They had been warned. Not in whispers, not in cryptic prophecy, but in a message delivered openly, bluntly, by a species that had once tried and barely survived. The Krell's emissary stood before the Galactic Council, its voice trembling, not from fear, but memory. It spoke not of strategy, not of alliances, but of a truth etched into the genetic memory of its people. Do not provoke the humans. They are not like us. If you hurt them, they will not stop. They will not rest. They will hunt you through time itself. The chamber responded with laughter. Ancient, arrogant laughter. The council believed in measured retaliation, in political boundaries, in wars that ended with treaties and profits. To them, humans were ambitious but undisciplined, emotional, disjointed. A minor power spreading too fast. Their culture was still rooted in old tribalism, their history blood-soaked with internal wars. That made them predictable. Containable. Soft beneath the pride. The vote passed. 12-2. A swift strike against Earth's outer research colonies, non-military, unarmed. It was meant to send a message: stay in your place. 147 lives were lost when Athena 12 fell. Scientists, engineers, families? There were no survivors. No distress signal. No warning. A clean kill. Galactic analysts predicted outrage, grief, perhaps a few retaliatory skirmishes. Earth would bluster. Martian command would threaten sanctions. But humans, they assumed, lacked cohesion. Their systems were autonomous, independent, even competitive. A strike like this would fracture them. They were wrong. In less than 48 hours, Earth, Mars, Titan, and every recognized colony across human-settled space issued a joint declaration. A unity accord. No public debate. No negotiations. Military, corporate, and civilian sectors were absorbed into one streamlined directive. The declaration contained no threats, no diplomacy, no outrage. Just one line, asterisk. We remember Athena 12. Asterisk. Alien intelligence agencies scrambled. No formal war had been declared. No fleets mobilized in the usual sense. Instead, resource movement patterns shifted subtly. Civilian transport ceased. Mining operations paused. Every long-range human satellite went dark. Trade lanes once rich with human freighters became voids. It wasn't retreat. It was silence. The council interpreted it as hesitation. They assumed the humans were reassessing, planning a counterproposal. But behind that quiet, something else had awakened. Human AI networks began running simulations at a scale never before recorded. Genetic algorithms optimized warfare patterns. Deep learning cores cross-referenced council fleet signatures with old diplomatic archives and navigation data. Within hours, humanity had mapped every council military outpost within 6 sectors. Not for negotiation. For elimination. The first strike didn't come with a fleet. It came as a silence. Varda 9, a council surveillance hub, simply ceased transmission. No alarms, no distress beacons. Recon units sent to investigate found nothing but frozen husks, ships, satellites, and bodies all drifting in perfect, untouched formation. The core had been fried, but no signs of battle. No explosions. Precision beyond comprehension. It wasn't just revenge. It was a message. Within days, whispers began to spread through neutral systems. Human diplomats had vanished. Civilian freighters were now armored. Human space traffic reorganized around silent military protocols. Where once there had been disorder, there was now complete cohesion. A unity forged not by politics, but by loss. The council dismissed Varda 9 as sabotage. An internal failure. An isolated anomaly. Pride still veiled their judgment. But the Krell did not forget. And neither did the humans. Old human conflicts had taught them something no simulation could capture: how to lose everything and still stand back up. The death of Athena 12 didn't shatter them. It honed them. The silence of their response wasn't delay. It was precision. Waiting for every piece to align, every calculation to finish, every target to be marked. And beneath that precision boiled something alien to the Council: vengeance with patience. The Krell had tried long ago, in the early days of human expansion. A raid on an Earth colony had cost them millions. Not in retaliation, humans hadn't declared war. They simply began to appear. One by one, Krell settlements vanished. Trade routes collapsed. Leaders died mysteriously. The Krell had sued for peace, offering reparations, surrender, anything. The humans had stopped only when silence returned. Now the Council had repeated history. And history, for humans, was never forgotten. The Krell emissary watched from the sidelines, eyes dim with bitter clarity. They had warned them. They had offered a chance to listen. But the Council chose arrogance. They believed war had rules. They thought humanity would act like the rest. They would learn otherwise. The silence after Varda 9 wasn't indecision. It was the moment before the storm. Humanity had already made its decision. There would be no negotiations, no ultimatums, no appeals to the Galactic Council's conscience. The time for diplomacy ended with the last heartbeat on Athena 12. Now, everything moved with cold precision. Military satellites across human space reoriented. Civilian communication networks rerouted through encrypted military nodes. AI-driven systems calculated Council fleet movements in real time using predictive models fed by decades of passive observation. Every vessel that had ever passed near Athena 12 had already been tagged, categorized, and filed into strike priority. The Unity Accord was more than a document. It was a complete restructuring of human civilization. Former rival factions like the Earth Continental Alliances and Martian Defense Forces integrated command hierarchies within hours. Artificial barriers, political, economic, national, were dropped without debate. Civilian corporations surrendered logistics, propulsion, and weapons tech to centralized war commands without resistance. Humanity didn't mobilize with grand fanfare. There were no propaganda speeches or mass parades. Instead, the mobilization was surgical. Quiet. Drones were retrofitted into long-range interceptors. Mining rigs were rearmed with stealth railguns. Cargo carriers were fitted with cloaking tech, turning supply ships into camouflaged weapons platforms. The Council's intelligence services struggled to keep up. They couldn't understand how fragmented human society had transformed overnight into a single, seamless war machine. By the time they noticed the first wave of disappearances, it was too late. Listening posts near the Kharids belt fell silent. A diplomatic convoy sent to re-establish contact with Earth's ambassadorial staff never arrived. No wreckage, no black box, just absence. The attacks were never broadcast. No announcements, no claims of responsibility. But the pattern was clear. Every location had one common factor: they had played a role in the sanctioning, planning, or execution of the Athena 12 strike. The Council still believed they were dealing with a limited conflict. They expected retaliation proportional to the loss. They underestimated the depth of human memory. What they failed to grasp was that humanity didn't see this as a war, it saw it as a reckoning. A campaign of remembrance forged in algorithmic fire and executed without hesitation. A new doctrine emerged from Earth's shadow councils. One phrase, asterisk. Permanent consequence. Asterisk. The mission wasn't just to defeat. It was to ensure such a war could never be considered again. The old idea of conflict resolution was abandoned. Now it was legacy erasure. The first visible demonstration came with the eradication of the Zyntel naval cache. A heavily fortified orbital installation guarding 6 Council fleets. Surveillance footage showed the outer rings shattering with no incoming fire detected. Internal systems fried milliseconds before backup power could activate. Ships, helpless and blind, collided in silence. The cache was gone in 12 minutes. The Council demanded answers. None came. Their calls were ignored. Their envoys vanished. For the first time in recorded interstellar history, the Council experienced the one thing they were never prepared for: irrelevance. Human command didn't wait for retaliation. They anticipated it. Fleets were split into mobile cells, each operating autonomously, each capable of striking deep behind enemy lines. No central weakness. No vulnerable core. While the Council tried to assemble a defensive perimeter, their outer colonies began disappearing, one by one. Psychological warfare followed. Devices were planted in the communication grids of surviving outposts, playing brief audio logs recovered from Athena 12, recordings of civilian screams, final goodbyes, static-laced pleas. No threats accompanied them. Just the sound of loss. And then silence. What unsettled the Council most wasn't the destruction. It was the precision. Humanity wasn't acting in fury. Every move was calculated. Every strike optimized. There were no wasted shots. No glory-seeking. No emotional overreach. Just methodical dismantling. Among Council worlds, panic simmered. Not from fear of defeat, but from the realization that nothing about humanity's behavior matched the expected patterns. They weren't trying to win territory. They weren't posturing for leverage. They weren't even demanding retribution. They had transcended those motivations. Humanity had shifted into something else, something that viewed the destruction of its people not as a cause for justice, but as a commandment etched in data and blood: never allow it again, not in this generation or the next. From the outer rim to the core systems, a new phrase began circulating in whispers, even among species who had once viewed humans as untested newcomers. Asterisk. Do not provoke Earth. Asterisk, the Krell had tried to explain. Now the galaxy was beginning to understand. Council analysts scrambled to make sense of the pattern, but there was no pattern, only loss. Targets were not military strongholds alone. Intelligence hubs, communication relays, supply convoys, and leadership nodes all disappeared in surgical silence. No warnings. No survivors. The speed and precision defied known warfare. The Council had always expected war to come with declarations, fleets, and negotiations. Instead, they received a quiet dismantling of their infrastructure, like rot spreading from the inside. Entire systems began reporting blackouts, power grids down, orbital defense AI offline, automated stations unresponsive. Attempts to investigate only led to more disappearance. Probes returned blank data. Search teams went missing. Survivors, if any, were left to tell stories of ships appearing without sensor detection, soldiers with no emblems, and weapons that didn't fire, but erased. The fear spread deeper when security feeds revealed human infiltration, operatives speaking alien dialects fluently, blending into Council-controlled populations, extracting data, sabotaging facilities from within. The concept of war had changed. The Council wasn't being engaged, they were being studied, dissected, and undone piece by piece. No one knew where the next strike would fall. Human operations showed no loyalty to predictable strategies. Sometimes it was a direct hit on a critical nexus. Other times they waited. Let fear ferment. Whole colonies began evacuating without being touched, terrified that remaining would mean vanishing overnight. Council war rooms turned chaotic. Internal factions split. One group argued for unconditional surrender. Another pushed for a full-scale counteroffensive. Neither succeeded. Human pressure made coordination impossible. Every communication could be traced. Every signal felt like bait. Then came the loss of the Valari bastion. Fortified for over 3 centuries, it had never been breached. Not by pirates, not by rebellions. Its AI-controlled defense systems were considered impenetrable. The humans never attacked directly. Instead, they corrupted the environmental systems, quietly raised internal radiation until the crew fled, and then let the station drift into a nearby sun. Nothing remained but heat and static. The Council still tried to push the idea that they could turn the tide. They assembled joint fleets, cross-species task forces, strategic command hubs. None lasted more than a cycle. Their fleets began refusing deployment orders. Morale collapsed. Officers resigned mid-assignment. Some defected outright, hoping that cooperation might earn them clemency. The human doctrine had spread: erasure, not conquest. They didn't occupy. They didn't enslave. They simply removed. Systems that resisted were neutralized entirely. Systems that remained passive were left untouched, but under watch. Satellites silently drifted through orbits. Drones observed from dark space. No broadcasts. Just presence. On neutral planets, populations began enforcing their own protection protocols, removing council installations, cutting ties, pleading neutrality. Not because humans had demanded it, but because the alternative was worse. Not even the fiercest species, known for centuries of defiance, dared speak against Earth. Back inside the council, fear began to mutate into something more dangerous: paranoia. Accusations of treason echoed through high command. Leaders vanished overnight. Not all of them were taken by humans. Some were eliminated by their own allies, desperate to present loyalty to an enemy that had never asked for it. The old order was fracturing. Trust collapsed. No one knew who had spoken to Earth, who had aided humans in secret, who might be a sleeper. Internal intelligence divisions turned on each other. What the humans hadn't broken, the Council now began to dismantle from within. Across the outer sectors, messages were intercepted from defectors, alien commanders begging Earth to spare their people, offering information, weapons, entire planets. In return, they asked for nothing but mercy. The humans did not respond. They didn't need to. Their silence was louder than any fleet. In one chilling transmission, a Council scout team reported finding an abandoned human outpost. No personnel, no equipment, just one wall intact, with the words, asterisk. This is not revenge. This is prevention. Asterisk. The deeper the Council looked into human operations, the more terrifying the implications became. Coordinated AI, decentralized command, no dependence on hierarchy or approval chains. Even if they struck a human fleet, it changed nothing. Every ship was replaceable. Every mission already passed down the line. Council efforts to trace the human command center failed. Probes found decoys, fake signals, and silent systems mimicking traffic. By the time they realized the misdirection, 3 more sectors had gone dark. A final internal report, marked high priority, circulated among surviving Council members. It concluded with a single line, asterisk. We are not fighting humans. We are surviving their memory. Asterisk. And even that, it warned, was temporary. Entire quadrants fell silent without resistance. Colonies once proud of their Council allegiance now transmitted emergency signals begging for clemency. The Council, fractured and directionless, could no longer respond with anything but silence or panic. Military fleets avoided confrontation, not from cowardice but from understanding. Any engagement ended in absolute loss. Ships vanished without sensor logs. Stations imploded from internal sabotage. No trace. No debris. Just erasure. The Galactic Defense Corps, assembled in desperation, was meant to be the turning point: 1,000 ships, elite command, multi-species cooperation. It was lured into a nebula near the Perseus line, following what appeared to be a small human convoy. Inside, comms failed. Guidance systems glitched. Star charts returned falsified data. It was a trap crafted not by brute strength but by comprehension of weakness. Minutes later, the entire fleet was reduced to drifting wrecks, blind and powerless. Automated salvage drones arrived, not to rescue, but to ensure nothing escaped. The Council no longer debated victory. It debated survival. But even those discussions proved futile. Human cyber warfare infected networks faster than fire. AI matrices collapsed. Defense protocols rewrote themselves. Entire archives were deleted before they could be backed up. The humans were not fighting a war, they were ending a legacy. Civilizations who once prided themselves on sovereignty now petitioned Earth for neutrality agreements. Not in arrogance, but in fear. The humans accepted none. They responded only with stillness, ever watching, never speaking. A silence that declared ownership without possession. Council planets that had hosted war councils began to witness a pattern. Cities emptied by evacuation orders. Power grids degraded. Skywatch towers blinked erratically. Then the message, never a threat, never a demand. Only fragments of audio recovered from Athena 12, static-laced cries, names of the dead, children's laughter followed by silence. Nothing more. And then the world was left alone, but no longer certain it was safe. Entire systems began disbanding government voluntarily. They feared being seen as extensions of the council. Regional governors erased public records, abandoned posts, erased digital infrastructure to appear irrelevant. In one system, an entire planetary population migrated underground, believing visibility itself was a risk. Fear of retribution became a cultural foundation. On the Council's core worlds, leaders issued denials. They insisted humanity would stop once enough damage had been done. That some form of negotiation would eventually be reached. But no envoys were received. No responses returned. The humans offered no terms because they sought none. Their purpose was not conquest, not punishment. It was permanence. New doctrines emerged among council defectors, religious movements forming around the concept of the human memory. They believed Earth's silence was divine judgment. That survival required confession and surrender. Shrines were erected to honor the lost of Athena 12. Some carved human names into their own monuments, hoping it would spare them. Still, the campaign didn't slow. Humanity had begun deploying the Ghost Protocol, autonomous hunter-killers without return instructions. These constructs operated beyond orders, guided by adaptive AI, executing the directive with no concern for delay, distance, or diplomacy. They required no maintenance, no communication. They existed solely to fulfill a sentence that humanity had already passed. Deep within shattered council space, an orphaned moon drifted in darkness. What remained of a council laboratory clung to its surface. Inside, they discovered human artifacts left deliberately, maps, files, images of the Athena 12 families. It wasn't revenge. It was education. A reminder. The message was clear. We do not forget. Neither will you. The most disturbing realization came not from destruction, but from what was left untouched. Planets that had supported the Council's strike but now fell silent remained intact. Humanity had marked them but had not acted. The implication was worse than elimination, it meant judgment was pending. The humans weren't reacting anymore. They were choosing. Calculating who would be allowed to exist. For the first time in centuries, the Council's influence vanished from the galactic center. Trade collapsed. Alliances dissolved. In their place, new networks emerged, built around avoiding Earth's attention. Entire civilizations rewrote history, removing references to the Council, pretending neutrality. But they knew the truth. Silence did not mean forgiveness. Even among human populations, the transformation was total. Children who lost families on Athena 12 were raised under a singular creed. Military academies accepted them young, trained them for operations that might last generations. They weren't soldiers. They were legacy bearers. What had begun as retaliation had evolved into doctrine. Humanity had reshaped the balance of power not by taking control, but by becoming a force no one dared provoke. They didn't need territory. They didn't need treaties. They only needed to be remembered. Not as victors, but as consequence. They didn't destroy the Council homeworld. They didn't need to. When the final phase began, humanity arrived without warning, without announcement, and without weapons drawn. Orbital defenses shut down before engaging. Command systems failed quietly. Entire planetary networks reverted to manual operations, blind and isolated. No shots fired. No damage taken. Just control stripped away, clean and precise. Human vessels descended, not with fire but with presence. No demands were issued. Instead, operatives moved through cities, scanned archives, accessed command terminals. They weren't searching. They were recording. Every official responsible for the Athena 12 sanction was logged, their identities indexed into permanent databases. Not detained. Not harmed. Simply known. At the center of the once mighty Council's administrative fortress, they left a memory core. A smooth black prism, humming quietly. No one dared touch it. But it activated on its own, projecting a full sensory reconstruction of Athena 12's last moments. Not filtered. Not edited. A direct transmission of horror, flickering lights, failing airlocks, silent corridors, the final faces of a colony extinguished. The broadcast rippled outward. Not just across the homeworld but through every remaining Council-affiliated system. Planets lit up with the sound of loss. Some residents wept. Others fell into stunned silence. Even those who had supported the strike recoiled. The images weren't propaganda. They were fact. Raw, brutal, and undeniable. Then the humans departed. No territories claimed. No governments overthrown. Just a silent exit. A void left behind that was more terrifying than any weapon. The message was unspoken yet absolute. Judgment had passed. The Council wasn't worth further engagement. Within weeks, the institution dissolved. Council species turned inward, severing ties, dismantling mutual command. Former allies refused to answer distress calls. No one wanted to be seen supporting a relic now marked. Political structures collapsed under fear's weight. Even those who once enforced Council policy now fled from association. Across the galaxy, a doctrine emerged organically: do not provoke humanity. Entire civilizations rewrote policy around that principle. Trade routes redirected to avoid human space entirely. New settlements built without formal announcement, hidden from scanners, structured to offer no threat, no offense, no opportunity for misinterpretation. The Krell, long silent observers, watched as prophecy fulfilled itself. They did not interfere. They only nodded. Their warning had not been heeded, but it had not been wrong. Humanity had not risen in rage. It had risen in certainty, executing a campaign so precise, so unrelenting, that even time bent around its consequences. Stories began circulating in fringe systems. Of human shadows appearing in places untouched by conflict. Of AI signals monitoring traffic quietly from deep space. Of outposts finding messages etched in unbreakable alloys. We see you. Whether real or rumor didn't matter. The fear was real. And effective. Humanity didn't offer forgiveness. It offered memory. A new equilibrium formed, not enforced by treaties, but by universal restraint. Every species understood one principle: survival depended on never repeating what had been done. Athena 12 had become more than a tragedy. It had become a law. The few who attempted to dismiss it, who mocked human discipline or questioned their reach, disappeared without confrontation. Not with explosions. Just a missing ship. A blacked-out station. A colony that no longer responded. No patterns. No claims. Only silence. Back in human territory, normal life resumed. But it was a new normal. Children were taught not just history, but principle. The names of Athena 12's victims were etched into memorial networks accessible from any human world. Not out of mourning, but as warning. Their loss was the anchor of doctrine: never tolerate aggression, never allow memory to fade. The military did not downsize. It evolved. Quiet fleets patrolled deep space, undetectable, untouchable. Monitoring, not intervening. The objective was no longer defense. It was prevention. The campaign had succeeded not because of strength, but because of conviction. A message was encoded into long-range probes launched toward uncharted space. One repeating signal, asterisk. To those who hear us, do not harm our kind. If you do, we will become your legacy. Asterisk. Humanity had become something the galaxy hadn't understood until it was too late. Not conquerors. Not diplomats. Something colder. A consequence embedded into the very laws of survival. A force that didn't seek vengeance, only certainty that the past would never be allowed to repeat. And so the galaxy changed, not by force, but by the enduring echo of a single event. The colony burned. The stars watched. And humanity ensured that no one would ever forget.